Hi, Karen Newby. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Anne-Marie. Lovely to be here.
I feel a little bit duplicitous because we have been talking for a long time before this conversation started because we just met. So I had a great conversation with you, finding out all about your take. And I've noticed you from social media and media, and you have a very reasonable look at all of this. And I read your book this week, Natural Menopause Method. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I hope you liked it.
I did. Okay, so let's just say, starting with, why did you write this book, The Natural Menopause Method? Because you didn't call it the Natural Menopause Food Method. You just called it the Natural Menopause Method.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was doing a lot of menopause work pre-COVID, pre the book. I've been running day retreats and I have a specialist menopause clinic for a long time now. And actually, my day retreats that I run are in the format of the book. So I've always had this kind of way of working with clients, way of talking people through the processes of sort of untangling what is going on at menopause. So actually, when it came to write the book, which I wrote during COVID, it was quite an easy process, actually, because it was already formulated in my head, the method, the way I look at different systems in the body, because everything is interconnected, and then going through onto food, and then into troubleshooting. So yeah, it was it sort of reflects my take on what is going on at menopause and how nutrition or nutrients and therapeutic foods and lifestyle and supplements can help get us back into control, because that's my main aim, is to get women to feel like they're in control again.
And when you talk about therapeutic foods, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's often quite frustrating as a nutritional therapist, because my industry is kind of brushed away with the kind of the balanced diet. And what does a balanced diet mean? And certainly if you look at the Eat Well plate in the UK, or the Eat Badly plate, it's full of kind of lots of refined carbohydrates, lots of packaging. There's very little, well, the protein is there, and that, there's very little fat. Fat is still demonized. So for me, therapeutic foods are foods that help us, that are helpful. I don't ever like to talk about food being healthy or unhealthy, or good and bad, because I'm a big believer that actually, if we have 80% helpful foods, we can deal with 20% rubbish. I'm a realist as well. And, for me, it's actually often about what we're putting in rather than what we're taking out. So this kind of concept of therapeutic foods is a nice way for everyone to think, okay, if I add in these extra foods that are going to be helpful to me without thinking about taking food out, I can do this. This isn't going to overwhelm me. This isn't a diet. I'm not stripping out all the sugar, because that's not realistic anyway. It's about crowding out cravings, for example, with, one of my therapeutic foods is, well, generally is more protein. And if we add in more protein, that means that will reduce our sugar cravings. So it's stuff like that. So it's kind of the therapeutic foods, and the family of phytoestrogens, for example, is a huge, hugely important therapeutic food for the natural menopause method, and for anyone going through menopause, really, regardless if you're on HRT or not. And again, for a lot of my clients, when they send me their 3-day food and drink diary, and I always say no marks out of 10. Often the food that they're eating is just really low in nutrients, really low in protein, and really low in phytoestrogen. So these are foods that you get from the soy family, which is your tofu, tempeh, edamame, etc., or lignans through ground linseed, and things like alfalfa, and although that's kumastans, which is another family. So it's about increasing nutrients, because for most of us, we have our most nutrient dense food at the end of the day. So I want you to be having these kind of therapeutic foods at breakfast, at lunch, with your evening meal, to help fuel you. because most of us are just sort of running on empty, and then no wonder by 3 o'clock that we're like hangry and shaky and faint and want to raid the cupboard. Yeah, so yeah, that's why for me it's important. It's about putting things in rather than taking things out, and that kind of helps us feel more relaxed about the process and that it's not a diet.
So what about starting the day off? Because really, one thing I've learned is that the way I start the day is pivotal, and mentally starting the day. But when we're talking about breakfast, what mistakes do you see people submitting in their food diaries, and how would you like us to rearrange that?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you that if you don't get that at the start of the day right, you then you have those kind of blood sugar roller coasters, and you are reacting to you become reactionary. Your food choices become reactionary. So the biggest mistake I see for women when it comes to breakfast is not having breakfast. And, a lot of people say, oh, I'm doing the 16-8 fast, which basically means you're missing breakfast. Whereas actually, if you're doing the 16-8 fast, I'd much rather people have breakfast and sort of dunch like a evening, in between lunch and evening meal, and go to bed a little bit hungry. If you're going to go do it that way, that to me works more naturopathically with your body rather than backloading things into the end of the day. So for many women, we're waking up drinking tea and coffee because we're so exhausted. And I get that, if we're exhausted, lack of sleep, big factor at menopause, we're going to wake up stressed, and then we're going to reach, again, reacting to that stress and reaching for caffeine. So that's another thing. If you have caffeine when you wake up, then you're not, that actually tricks your body into thinking it's had something to eat. It releases stored glucose from your liver and our muscles, and makes us think, oh, we're not hungry. So that's why a lot of people then miss breakfast. And then by 10:30, they're like, really needing, they're crashing, their energies are crashing, and that sort of blood sugar roller coaster commences. So that I think is and then on top of not eating breakfast, the other way is eating a lot of refined carbohydrates. And, my background is in marketing and in advertising, and, food marketing is an absolute nightmare. And especially when it comes to breakfasts, the breakfast cereal market are fully entrenched in the UK with the kind of the British Nutrition Foundation. Nestle, for example, recently brought out a Kit Kat cereal. I mean, how that ever got through trading standards, I do not know. These often people are sort of misled when it comes to thinking that they're making helpful choices, but actually they're just taking on loads and loads of sugar. And all these companies pertaining to be healthy when actually they're sending us huge amounts of sugar. And then we get that highs of blood sugar, and then we get the lows, which means that we get hangry, shaky, faint, need to eat now. So they're my two big things. Yeah, not eating it, just having caffeine and having the high sugar or highly refined. I mean, when you look at cornflakes, I mean, what is that? Is that a food? I don't think it is really.
And even, there was just a documentary in the UK from the program Panorama about ultra processed foods, and I've been so amused at how much of a controversy it's caused. But if you aren't aware of these refined ultra processed foods and the impact that they have on you, you've been marketed to that they are actually good for you. So how much of a role do ultra processed foods have in the problems women are having in menopause, do you think?
Yeah. And, much of our symptoms, is it due to our diet over menopause? And one of the biggest things that ultra processed foods do is they destabilize our blood sugar. They're also full of absolute rubbish as well, so they give our liver more work to do. But my biggest connection really with ultra processed is the fact that they are very refined, and because they're so refined, we can eat a lot more of them because the stretch receptors of our stomach aren't stimulated by the fiber, which then makes the problem even worse. So ultra processed foods are going to, our body hasn't really changed much in 20,000 years. We haven't had a big upgrade since then. So our brain is so sensitive to highs and lows of blood sugar. So if we have a sort of a bowl of refined cereal, etc., or our Rice Krispies or our cornflakes or whatever, our blood sugar is going to go way up and then it's going to crash. And if we get lows of blood sugar, this creates things like irritability, mood swings, guilt, that whole thing, the diet industry I can't bear, setting women up to fail, and that awful thing of those lows in blood sugar making us feel guilty, because when we have that low in blood sugar, that's the brain gets a signal, there's low blood sugar, and stimulates stress hormones to bring the blood sugar back up. And we get an incredible craving to eat more refined carbohydrates, more ultra processed foods to bring the blood sugar back up quickly. We are not going to want to eat broccoli. We are going to want to eat more, refined foods. So the food industry are incredibly clever. The snacking industry, for example, is worth absolute billions. And we never used to snack, in the 70s and 80s, because there wasn't this, we had chocolate bars and things like that, but the snacking thing wasn't really a big thing. We are constantly eating because we're getting the blood sugar lows, which means that we're constantly craving food. So at menopause, we have this this combination of not only continuing to eat as we always have done, or might have done, the ultra processed foods, but our metabolism changes. So estrogen is involved with helping our cells be more insulin sensitive, so that we can take in insulin, we can store the glucose from the blood and put into fat cells, or stored as glucose in the liver and the muscles. But as we come into menopause with those dips, those roller coasters of estrogen, we can become more insulin resistant, which means heightened levels of insulin in our blood. That then causes higher fats. This then causes weight gain. Insulin is our main storage hormone. So it's a sort of a heady mix, really. Our hunger hormone also increases at menopause as well, ghrelin. And actually at menopause, it's an inflammatory event in our lives, and sugar, refined carbohydrates all fuel inflammation in the body. Weight round the middle is increasing inflammatory cytokines. So we have this kind of perfect storm, which is why it's really important to start to look after yourself and to listen to your body and to think, okay, I've put on, for example, lots of weight, sudden weight gain. No, my toolkit of my 20s and 30s isn't working anymore to lose that weight. And the reason is because of these metabolic kind of roadblocks. No amount of calorie counting, no amount of kind of cardio is going to shift that weight. We need to trick the body into releasing it. And this is why I can't bear the diet industry, because they set women up to failing. And it's such an old-fashioned dietic model of calories in plus exercise equals calories out. And I never recommend anyone calorie count, because it's one way to really take the joy out of food, out of eating.
I like to joke that when I have ever gone down that route, I haven't for a long time, it sort of gave me an instant eating disorder, like an instant perfectionism. And it's just the wrong way to go. Like if you're a perfectionist, it's just a terrible route. And I'm still surprised on social media how often I see people talking about 150 calories here, and it's crazy. But anyway, yeah, it must make you want to pull your hair out. Okay. So, when we talk about blood sugar, I mean, you say when you have a cleanse, you say in your book, you recommend a sort of a 2-week cleanse, and that can actually clear up hot flashes. There's been a lot in the media about reducing hot flashes. The North American Menopause Society just came out with its non-hormonal guide for hot flashes. It was really nothing about food in there. It was about drugs. But how much of hot flashes, which everyone is obsessed with curing, how much of hot flashes do you think is due to what we ingest?
Oh, a very large amount, because I see it in clinic. There's lots of reasons. So, for example, in China, and I used to live in China, the women there don't suffer with hot flushes like we do, which is about 80% of us in the West. And one of the reasons I would pertain is because they eat loads of phytoestrogens and have been doing all of their life. So those phytoestrogens, like the tofu, the tempeh, the ground linseed, well, they won't be having so much ground linseed, but that's great for us if we can access it as an alternative to tofu if you're not friends with tofu. But also they're eating a lot of plants as well. I mean, they have other issues going on out there, but the hot flushes aren't as prevalent. But also with the sugar, a classic, and I would say that the cleanse it's not everyone can do the cleanse. You can still function in the real world. It's very gentle. It's just basically plant-based and taking out alcohol and caffeine and lots of refined foods, refined sugars. So it's a way of kind of starting to rewire the body and to change our palate away from such sort of sweet palate. Anyway, but the mechanism with blood sugar is that when we get a low in blood sugar, that increases cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. And adrenaline and noradrenaline are vasodilatory. So they are exacerbating, they're vasodilatory as in they cause sweats, and they, our skin cells start to dilate to let the heat out, or what the body pertains to be heat, but we're not actually hot. It's just the temperature, the thermostat has been affected because of estrogen dropping. But so if you sort out your blood sugar, or this is one of the ways that you can help support to stop hot flushes, is to balance your blood sugar. So that means increasing protein, increasing good fats. Complex carbohydrates are absolutely fine. There's a lot of demonization about oats and all of these kinds of things at the moment. This is all fine. But so by stabilizing your blood glucose, you're not getting those waves of those vasodilatory hormones. So for example, night sweats, one way to help night sweats is to have a protein-rich snack before bed to eliminate night sweats coming from lows in blood sugar, which might happen at night. And unfortunately, all those stress hormones then wake you up. That might be a reason. But other reasons are things like knowing what your trigger is and avoiding those triggers, which is why stress is a trigger, because stress releases cortisol, but also adrenaline and noradrenaline, which are vasodilatory. So the blood sugar balancing, hot drinks, caffeine, even things like chili and MSG, all of these things, just knowing what your trigger is important too. But there are loads of great foods as well. So for example, vitamin E, lots of research on vitamin E with hot flushes, and vitamin E is really high in evening primrose oil, which is why evening primrose oil was sort of very much the kind of the supplement for the change, as it used to be called, because it helps with that. And evening primrose oil is a really old-fashioned remedy that is not expensive, that's really easily accessible, and will also help if you're getting other inflammatory issues which happen at menopause, because it's an inflammatory event, like eczema, for example. Evening primrose is great for eczema. So I very much am and I see it in my practice. These things really work, and they're not expensive. We can do them, and be free of. I mean, I do get waves of a little bit of heat. I've always been a very cold person, so I'm actually quite happy to be a bit hotter, to be honest. I don't mind the cold so much anymore. But also it is a way of listening to your body and thinking, okay, well, this is what's going on. But I totally understand that some women are dealing with really full-on symptoms, which is not pleasant, because then it's affecting your sleep, it's affecting your work, you're losing confidence, etc. But wanting to leave work, I don't want any woman to have to leave work when we're at the top of our careers. But everything that I recommend, everything in the body is interlinked. And this is why stress is such a big, everyone knows what stress is, but no one knows what it is. And it has such a big ripple effect across our endocrine system and our nervous system and our, our digestive system. Often with clients and at my retreats, the second stage, the second step in my menopause method is cleanse, and that's about supporting your digestive system, because we are what we digest, we are what we assimilate into cells, we are what we detoxify, and we are what we eliminate. And, we need to, I can't tell you how much just looking, sorting out your digestive system has a wonderful ripple effect across a lot of other symptoms. And it helps to balance estrogen. So, menopause is a natural transition. It's not a deficiency disease. And I think certainly in the UK, that is the kind of narrative, which in my opinion isn't correct, because we still produce estrogen and we still produce progesterone in lower amounts, but we're producing it in the adrenals. There's estrogen coming, estradiol still in the ovaries, but not as much. And this is why we have this kind of what can be a really uncomfortable roller coaster to get to those lower levels. But that's when phytoestrogens can help blunt that roller coaster. Obviously there's, I'm very much a complementary practitioner. I'm not anti-HRT at all. HRT can be a valuable part of the menopause toolkit. So I'm very much, modern medicine is amazing too. But, there's the wonderful thing about, even if you're on HRT, the sort of my naturopathic process is that it's actually future-proofing us for the next 40 years of our life. I want us all to live as long as possible and as vitally as possible. So coming back to the hot flushes, there's much that can be done. And there's some nice supplements out there as well. We haven't spoken about supplements, but they can be really useful if you don't like eating tofu and things like that. But it's for me, that's the approach that I take. The more vitamin E foods you can take, and phytoestrogens, these foods are giving you other amazing benefits as well. For example, tofu is high in calcium, it's high in protein, it's low fat. If you really, I don't want to go down that low fat, but it is plant-based. It is, and I'm very much for full fat. I would just caveat that. But it's also an amazing source of plant sterols and phytosterols, which are great for reducing cholesterol. So a lot of women at menopause get high cholesterol because estrogen not only is involved with insulin, it's involved with lipids. And actually, if we have high amounts of insulin, that's creating more kind of, imbalances with lipids, and then increases in cholesterol. So I see a lot of women in practice that suddenly got really high cholesterol. So, these phytosterols and really good sources, soya will be helping you with that. So that's the beauty of food for future-proofing you, as well as helping symptoms too.
What about the liver, the gut, the thyroid? Like, how many times do you find that women are actually having problems, that perhaps they have a fatty liver they don't know about? They have had IBS for years, that maybe they have a low thyroid that they don't. How many women do you think are dealing with these kinds of things and perhaps don't know, and it's exacerbating their menopause, but they're treating it like menopause?
Yeah, I think a lot. And I think a lot of that goes back to the fact that we're hurried women, that we don't look after ourselves, and we're looking after everyone else, and our animals come before us on the to-do list. I think a lot of women have put up with IBS or IBS-like symptoms their whole life, to be honest. And then suddenly at menopause, it can get completely exacerbated because of life load. So obviously IBS is very much linked. It's a physical manifestation of cortisol, where the colon is, the digestive function is down-regulated by stress, because the body's like, I'm in survival mode. I don't want to think about digestion. So it speeds up the emptying of the colon. And then this can get exacerbated at menopause as we're dealing with heightened life load, but also because estrogen and progesterone are roller coastering, we can often get heightened anxiety. So our perception of stressors becomes heightened, and we find our stress tolerance reduces. I think that's the thing. But also our stress load is increasing, but our ability to deal with stress is reducing. And for me, I always say that stress can be a positive force if we can adapt to it. And so, my first port of call in the natural menopause method is to look at life load and looking at resetting. to help us be more resilient. So anyway, so coming back to the liver, I mean, my goodness, everything about our hormones is about the liver. And again, I think, and it's partly because the liver doesn't have any pain receptors on it, so it's quite difficult to. It's not going to be shouting. I see it as a very much a female multitasking, amazing organ that just sort of gets on with it as best as it can. But obviously, the liver is incredibly important for the thyroid. We make the active T3 is from T4, is actually created in the liver, or is metabolized in the liver. Our liver is incredibly important to getting out excess estrogen. So we often talk about menopause as being low estrogen, but actually it's about imbalances. Everything in the body is about balance, and this is the problem. This is why menopause can be a very uncomfortable time, because estrogen can actually be quite high. Can be often unopposed by progesterone, which is one of the hormones that often reduces first when we stop ovulating. We're not ovulating as much, even though our cycles might be still regular. And this unopposed estrogen can lead to things like, breast cysts and water retention and fibroids. And, if you have fibroids and endometriosis, or indeed estrogen sensitive breast cancers, these are all estrogen sensitive conditions. So estrogen can be very proliferative. Heavy periods, for example, is when the lining of the uterus is increasing because of this heightened estrogen, or this unopposed estrogen. So heavy periods and flooding is often quite an early symptom of perimenopause, even though our cycles are normal and we might not be getting, hot flushes are very much kind of towards the latter part of perimenopause, when, estrogen is really sort of plummeting or going up and down. So the liver is incredibly important to help support it do its work better. So that will help with bile flow, which will help with cholesterol. I work a lot with acupuncturists as well, and they often talk about the liver being a lot of heat in the liver, where liver can be sort of blocked. I mean, I don't know much about traditional Chinese medicine, but from a biochemical perspective, that kind of makes sense, because I always see the liver as a kind of a network of sort of like on a house where we have our gutters. The gutters need to be all clear to let the rainwater in, or large amounts of alcohol, or whatever, if you're going out, etc., or lots of toxins. They need to be able to flow down these gutters well. And if those gutters are blocked, that will cause backup. And that will cause more free radicals, for example, which then exacerbates that inflammation. So we have 2 stages of detoxification in the liver, and we need to be making sure that they're flowing from one to the other. And then the 3rd stage is out the gut. So, and the gut, how many women are constipated? How many of us are constipated? If we're constipated, that means that estrogen is then going to get backed up via the hepatic portal vein back to the liver and back into the bloodstream. So, it's really important to get this clearance. We need to be able to get everything out of the body. But then our poor thyroid, our thyroid is really affected by the adrenals and by stress. So the adrenals, if your adrenals are working super hard, if you are almost burnt out, or if you are running on empty, if you're drinking loads of caffeine, if you're really stressed, really strung out, burnout is real. And those adrenal glands are actually our ovary backups. So they produce a weaker form of estrogen post-menopause. They produce progesterone for us, but they also produce cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. Although noradrenaline and adrenaline are coming through the pituitary, but they are, and they produce testosterone for us. And the thing is, with stress, is that the body downregulates the endocrine system, because it thinks, no, I need to survive over pregnancy. The body is amazing. It's so smart. And I just think for us, we often don't listen to it. And that's the thing with the thyroid, is that the adrenals are like, I can't deal with high metabolic rate. So it quietens the thyroid. And that's the thing with low thyroid. That can also affect your cholesterol levels, but low thyroid, you have to support adrenals first, and then the thyroid will follow. So yeah, a lot going on.
Okay, last question, and it's a big one. But in the current climate, when you talked about deficiency narrative, which you worked in marketing, that's a marketing term to make us feel deficient so that we have to take hormones. And no one's saying that we don't take hormones if we need to take hormones, but there's a difference between saying you are deficient and you must take hormones, as opposed to you might want to add hormones and get all these other things in order. But we're in a climate where natural is being demonized. And I actually have seen a couple of doctors in the US say the exact same phrase, which is natural is a weapon to keep women in their place. And it was eerie to me because, first of all, whenever I see multiple people saying the same thing, you know that that's messaging that's been given to them somehow. Like that doesn't happen by accident. But I'm just wondering, when you're working in the realm of natural, like what do you call it then? Or what's your take on it? Like, how do you survive when you're like, look, we want to do all these things first. Hormone therapy might work. It's not a magic bullet. Like, how do you parse all that?
Well, I think the way that in the States they talk about, it's MHT, isn't it? Menopause hormone therapy, which versus in the UK, which is HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. And I think those two kind of acronyms are very subtle, but the difference is quite marked in terms of menopause hormone therapy is something you can take should you need it and not feel guilty about it. Please, modern medicine is amazing. Please take what you need and don't feel guilty about it. Seriously, women are, we have it all, but we are so squeezed, and we are so, our male counterparts are not going through all of this. So if you need it, take it. Whereas in the UK, hormone replacement therapy is in the same umbrella as taking thyroxine, for example, or metformin if you've got diabetes. They are two pathologies. They are two conditions that require hormones in order to top up the deficiency. Whereas, our hormones are not, it puts us then into this kind of this pathology, which I think actually sort of feeds into the kind of narrative of women as weaker. And, having this deficiency suddenly, it's quite patriarchal. If you look back at the advertising in the 50s and the 60s about, for HRT, is like, the men get their woman back. It's really interesting to me. And I agree, there is this kind of this way of talking that filters through and is repeated again and again. So I think, the naturopathically, all of the things that I write about in my book and all of the things that I talk about are backed up by biochemistry. And I think it is frustrating because as a nutritionist, we often get sort of, told that that's just not the case, that there isn't the data there, and there is, and there's some really massive studies, for example, on Alzheimer's and nutrient dense diets, and even big studies done with women that have the APOE E4 allele polymorphism that makes not you're going to get Alzheimer's, but can make us more susceptible. But even with those genetic polymorphisms, there's still nutrient dense diet and exercise are still the main reasons to help support you to minimize that effect. But they never make the headlines. So the way I approach it is I just keep doing what I'm doing. As I say, I'm very much a complementary practitioner. I'm not anti-HRT at all, but I am passionate about helping women support themselves through their kitchen, the kitchen pharmacy, as it were. I'm also really passionate about small changes that really work. And, that's why, for many of us, I just talk about the first hour of your day. If you change the first hour of your day, it will create a ripple effect that will make you feel more in control of what you're eating, and make your head clearer, make you feel more contented, make you feel more grounded. help your gut. Your gut is your second brain. It just helps on so many levels. The drinking water on waking, or hot water and lemon, or hot water and ginger, then having a protein-rich breakfast and only having caffeine with your breakfast. Rest of the day, I don't care what happens, but even that will help, remarkably help. I can't tell you how much that will help. But that's not front page news. That's I don't know. I don't know why there is this thing of for me, it's an empowerment for women. And obviously I see a lot of women on HRT, and HRT is also not the magic bullet, but that's not talked about either. And that can actually make women then feel bad because it's not working for them. Why isn't it working for me? Because we're all individual and we all respond to hormones, synthetic hormones, differently. It's a really interesting place to be. But yeah, that's very concerning that these narratives are coming out in the States. I hadn't heard that, but yeah, not surprising though.
It's happening. Okay, where can people find you, best engage with you?
My website, KarenNewby.com, or I'm on Instagram, Karen.Newby.nutritionist. That's probably the easiest ways.
Okay, cutting through the nutrition confusion online. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Lovely to chat, Anne-Marie. Thank you.